Welcome to Association Chat, an online discussion where we can warm ourselves by the virtual fire with the topics of the day, welcoming thought leaders and trailblazers alike to join up in this online home for the community. I'm the host of Association Chat, Kiki L'Italienne, and for today's episode, yes, drumroll please. I never did the drumroll thing very well. What is belonging? And why does it matter? What is belonging and why does it matter? Actually, this is something that we need to care about quite a bit because for associations, we need to worry about making our members, making people who are stakeholders in our organizations feel like they belong. But why aren't we any good at it? Or why aren't we better at it? Maybe we're really great at it, but we just kind of lucked into it. Who knows? We're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about human values. We're going to talk about so much more with one of my absolute favorite guests and people, David Allison. Now, David has been on the show before. We've really focused on value graphics with our conversations with him before this. We're going to concentrate on that today too, but we're also going to really focus and zero in specifically on this concept of belonging. David is a human behavior expert. He's an advisor to global brands and a leading advocate for discarding demographic stereotypes. Literally, he wrote the book, okay, The Death of Demographics. And we're going to be talking about all of that and the fact that he's the founder of the Valuegraphics database, which is the world's first database that can predict and influence behavior for anything on Earth. It's no small feat. So, hi, David. Yay. I'm so glad that you're here.
I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me back.
I mean, the thing is that I can't get enough of you. I had to travel to Frankfurt, Germany to see, to run into you again. And so, I feel really honored that you're joining me today to talk about this really important topic.
I'm always happy to talk with you. I'm always happy to talk with my association friends around the United States, around the world. You're all doing important work, and anything I can do to help is something I'm very interested in.
Well, so let's get to it, right? Because the thing is you wrote the great book, The Death of Demographics, which, by the way, congratulations on the continued success. Friends, David and I were just talking about this wonderful book tour and speaking that he does. He just did a keynote in Nevis and probably visited St. Kitts while he was there. I'm not sure, but world traveler and just doing a phenomenal job. So congratulations on all of that.
Thanks. It's the Instagram version of it looks really glamorous and fun.
It does. It does look, but you're telling me that maybe looks can be deceiving.
Oh, we all know that, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
I know.
everything. There's a dark underbelly to most things in life, and constant business travel is no different.
Yeah, don't cry for me, Argentina. I see you, David Allison. So let's talk about this concept of belonging. You wrote about it as one of the human values in your book, and I wonder how you would define belonging, especially in the context of an association or an event.
Well, you're going for the big questions right away because here's the thing, just in case some people watching aren't familiar with our work and what we've done. I need to just put a little context around that question because, we've done close to 1 million surveys around the world now. And we ask people about what's important in their life and how they live and what are they passionate about. We never once asked them about their values because people always lie to you about their values because they want to impress you or they want to impress themselves. So we just talk to them about who they are as people. And then we listened to all this information coming in and we sorted it out into piles and said, oh, look at that. There's 56 different things that are driving people to do all the things they do. Each one of those is a value because our values drive us. One of those piles of things is got the label of belonging. So when we talk about belonging, it's super important to understand that it's not this kind of one size fits all thing. That what is belonging, in fact, in the Valuegraphics database, there's 912 kinds of belonging. 912 different meanings for the word belonging. So what makes me feel like I belong in a particular situation, and Kiki, what makes you feel like you belong in a particular situation, very likely very different things. So we have to start this conversation with a really open mind. What each person listening and watching today thinks of as belonging, it's not, that's great for you. But if what you're trying to do is help other people feel like they belong, you also need to realize this comes in a bunch of different flavors. This is
Mhm.
full on Baskin Robbins here. There's a lot of different kinds of belonging that we need to take into consideration.
It's such a good point. And I mean, I mentioned it earlier, just kind of briefly as I was bumbling through the introduction about this idea of why associations really need to care about this, and really we all need to care about it. And that's because this concept of belonging or belongingness, this quality of feeling like you belong to a group of that you can be yourself and that you can be safe when you're with others, is so critical, because I think, especially in times where there's a lot of uncertainty and times where there's a lot of change, people look to evaluate, and assess whether they feel safe and whether they really, and this is not me, this is like from research that's been done,
Mm.
where it's like they really try to reevaluate and reassess where they feel safe and if they can trust that information. So trust is an issue. And so I pulled this quote from some work that has been done by Pew, and they say a community is a collection of people in which they receive a sense of belonging, connection, and a feeling of safety. They give trust and investment over time. And I think that that's really interesting, because as we look at belonging, there are so many different ways that we can look at it. So I think that's why it's really important and interesting, this work that you're doing, in sort of looking at that more carefully and figuring out, well, what flavor of belonging are you?
Yeah. And then
How does this work out?
it's a really fascinating thing. Let's put a little context around it. There's in the Valuegraphics database, there's 5 different values that we
Hmm.
call the togetherness values. And belonging is one of them, but also friendship and community and relationships and family. And these are all the different ways we want to be together, the ways that humans around the world want to be with other humans. And it's why we all had such a hard time with COVID and the pandemic lockdowns, is because we weren't able to be together in the ways that we want to be together. Now, of
Hmm.
those 5, the belonging value, it's quite a dominant value in many parts of the world. Not everywhere, but in many parts of the world, it's very dominant. And my definition of it, all due respect to Pew, is just knowing that you fit in.
Hmm.
You just want to
Hmm.
be in a place where you feel like you fit in. And that what is so you start to unpack it. What does it take to feel like you fit in? It's a it's a fascinating thing. You start talking about all the different actual characteristics and attributes and tactics necessary to make you feel that way. Think about in your own experience, like just like the last time you were in a place where you actually felt like, yeah, this is my place, these are my people. From an association perspective, that's what we want, because that's what makes people renew their memberships next year and get involved in the committees and do the volunteer work and be willing to be a mentor and get their accreditation and all the different things that associations are hopeful that people will do. Is first off, they just got to feel like it's their place,
Hmm.
fit in
Hmm.
here, and then all that other stuff can start to come into the mix. But I'll give you a quick example of how this breaks up in different ways. So, um, well, let's look at it from around the world, because that's an interesting way to think about it. If we look at the United States, for example, belonging is the number one most important value.
Hmm.
86% of the population of the United States is influenced by the value of belonging. So anybody in any business, association business, or the business events industry, or anything that anybody listening today might be interested in, it's always a safe bet to try and increase the how much belongingness people feel around your product, your service, your brand, your group, your community that you're trying to build. But it's interesting, there's two other places in the world where it's more important. They're all in first place, but in Pacific Oceania, so our friends in New Zealand and Australia, it's over 90% of the population
Wow.
influenced by the value of belonging. Then we go right down to the bottom of the list, and this is equally fascinating. And let's not jump to conclusions because there's a story here. But you go down to the very bottom, oof, words, David, use your words. The the part of the world where belonging is the least important is Africa. Now, that really flummoxed me when I saw that data coming in. I was like, whoa, what's that about? And so I talked to some friends who are ethnographic researchers in Africa and said, what's going on here? Because the other thing that's interesting about Africa is way up at the top of the list, so more so than anywhere else in the world, is the value of community. So in Africa, there's this sense that belonging is like, of course, I'm going to feel like I belong. It's all about being part of the community. Community is even family. Family takes a second or third or fourth place to community. There's an African term called Ubuntu. And it means, I'm going to butcher this, but it basically means we're all here because we're all here for each other. If you weren't here, I wouldn't be here. And if you weren't here, and vice versa, that, the line that kept thrown around all through COVID, we're all in this together. So
Right.
that's the way they sort of, people in Africa are brought up. It's part of the culture that I'm going to help you and be part of this community because tomorrow I might need you to help me. And so by being reciprocally respectful of each other, we build community. And part of that is family. Part of that is friendships. Part of that is a sense of belonging. But it's all about community. Where in the United States, belonging is at the top of the pile. It's the most important value of all, even more than family, which is kind of interesting. So it varies from one part of the world to the next. And around the world, it's only in fourth place.
Huh.
It's not the most important value globally, but it definitely is in the United States.
Well, and I was looking through your book to like, sort of study up on what you'd written and what you'd found about belonging. And you mentioned some things that I thought, some stories that I really enjoyed. And one of them was toward the end, you started talking about, you put on you got into your marketing brain and you said, you were curious, you wanted to ask a certain fast food giant if their customers in Asia want to have it your way or if they prefer to have it the most popular way. And I thought that was pretty interesting because it's that idea of what does belonging really mean, and when does it mean something like going along to get along or going with the flow, versus this other idea of belonging where it's like I can be fully express who I am as an individual and still be accepted. It's very different, right?
It's very different. Let's look at some of the different definitions of belonging because they're really quite tactical, in fact, and useful. So for some people, belonging is about being part of a recognized group. And the word recognized is important. I don't want to be part of a group that nobody knows about. I want to be a part of a group that allows me to badge myself and borrow that brand and make it part of my brand. So I need to be part of a recognized group. For other people, it's just about being part of a group. It doesn't matter. The recognized part is immaterial. So you can think about the difference between belonging to the country club and belonging to a group of guys who get together and go golfing. So one kind of belonging versus another kind of belonging. So if you're an association, knowing what kind of belonging is applicable in your particular case is actually quite interesting. We also see there's some generational differences. And as you know, my book is called The Death of Demographics. I'm not a big fan about using generations to stereotype, but sometimes we do see some variances in terms of the meanings of various values. The values don't vary from one generation to the next, but the meanings of them can. So for younger members of the workforce, for example, one thing that we've learned from the various definitions, belonging happens best and most impactfully when they're working together with other people to get some good stuff to happen. If you've got a group of folks that you're trying to foster that sense of belonging, if you can get them involved in doing something amazing for the food bank, or doing something together to raise some money for a not-for-profit that's somehow associated to your association, or it's about togetherness in service of creating something bigger than better than ourselves. Whereas the more senior members of the workforce tend to be about recognized membership in clubs that everybody else is aware of, clubs or groups or associations or those sorts of things. So if you've got a more senior portion of your association, then one of the things you should be doing is realizing how important your brand is to their brand. So what can you do to make your brand as an association even more loud, noisy, prestigious, all of those things, so that they, you may not actually do this, but metaphorically speaking, you want them to want to wear the name of your association on a sweatshirt. They're like, yes, I belong to this group. So investing in your own brand is really going to help cement that sense of belonging with the older portion of your membership. Whereas the younger portion of the membership, they got to feel like they're working on something together to make something happen, to get something done. So you might even just very, very simply take those two data points, which hold true for the United States, and say those are two kinds of programmatic insights. How can those roll out within the context of your association and the association work you're trying to do?
Yeah. Well, and it's such an important question that people, I feel like, yes, you need to do this research. You really need to be asking these questions anyway. And I framed this discussion because the way that I did, because it's not just focusing on associations in general and this idea of belongingness for the membership, but it's also looking specifically at events, because all associations have their meetings, they have these events that sort of bring people together. And the idea is that there is this importance on this sense of belonging to happen at events. So how do you do that? How do you create that? And I signed up to take part in the Google XI belonging conversations earlier today, David.
Wonderful. Oh, that's great.
This is very fresh, very, very fresh. And so Google XI is the Google Experience Institute, and you have been quite involved with them, with Storycraft Lab, in doing, and with Valuegraphics, to do this belonging project, this belonging index. And so walk us through how all of this kind of came together and what you're doing with them. Because I have to say, I don't want to like spill the beans entirely on everything that happened with this conversation earlier today. It was fascinating. It was really, really interesting to take part in it. It was a lot of fun. There were it was just a fascinating process. And so talk to me about what you're doing. How did this come to be?
Well, how it came to be is through our mutual friend Tahira, actually.
Yes.
I do a lot of public speaking. I have this amazing database that allows me to get up on a stage, and whoever's listening, I can say, here's the values of the people that you all are out there are trying to engage. And so I get really fortunate and get to do some really fun speaking gigs. And so I was getting ready to go to Frankfurt, where you and I last connected in the real world and had our last hug. And Tahira was telling me about this group led by Google and partnering with Storycraft Lab, who are working on belonging and how do we increase the sense of belonging at events, because that's what IMEX in Frankfurt is all about. It's about the business events industry. I went, wow, what have they been up to? And she told me a little bit about how they've been out talking to event planners around the world and trying to figure out what's the key to making events as inclusive as possible for all kinds of people with all kinds of brains and all kinds of disabilities, and everybody needs to feel like they belong at an event. They've landed on this value of belonging as sort of the key to unlocking really great leaps forward around creating good, engaging business events. I said, wow, that's fantastic. And I have all this data on belonging. Why don't we connect? So sure enough, I ended up on the phone with the folks from Google. my friend Megan Henshaw there, and with Naomi Claire Crellin from Storycraft Lab, who have been doing all this qualitative research. Told them about our quantitative data on the subject of belonging, and we decided that their peanut butter and our jam would make a really good sandwich. And so now we have this thing that we've put together that's in, I'm going to say we're kind of still in beta test mode, but it's out there in the world for anybody to use. So we'll in the show notes or something. We'll there you go. It's Belonging
Yeah.
Index. It's a crazy URL right now, but
Mhm.
it's called the Valuegraphics Belonging Index. And what it does is you can go onto this site. You can choose the region of the world that your next event is going to be in. And then you choose the occupation of the people who are coming to that event. And then it spits out for you the top 3 kinds of belonging that group of people in that part of the world are looking for. The 3 definitions of belonging that top the list for those folks. So as a meeting planner or an association person who's trying to put an event together, if you can go and use this thing, it'll tell you some of those tips and clues on what is exactly necessary in order to make those folks feel like they belong. Now, here's a little bit of a secret for you. It'll also just work for associations in general.
Mhm.
This data around those people in this part of the world is about how they see belonging everywhere in their life, not just at a business event. So you can take the same tool and use it to figure out what does belonging mean for the association in general, as well as the events that you're putting on, and start to really embed that thinking in everything you do, so that you get that beautiful state where your association members have that sense that they fit in, that this place is for them.
Yeah, I had Megan and Naomi on the show maybe a month ago,
I love those.
and
They're
I
so fun.
they are so fun. And we were talking about the project and how critical it is, how really important it is that we understand belonging so that we can do a better job when we're bringing people together, not just for the events and all of this other stuff, but in general, just as humans, being able to bring people together and to work together more effectively by increasing this sense of belonging and just understanding it more. And as we were talking, I got really curious about why it is that I don't feel more of a sense of belonging when I go to some events. Like, and I realized part of it, I mean, part of it's me, part of it is I'm not investing my time and my energy into having these unique exchanges, which will create a more meaningful relationship, cultivating those relationships, right? So that's definitely happened when I'm feeling tired or whatever.
Yeah.
But other times I think I go to the events and I feel like everything is so scripted and planned and prepared out that there's like I'm just a cog. I'm not a human. I'm just a piece, and it doesn't really matter if I'm there. And
Hmm.
so it's like the opposite of feeling like I belong. It's like I feel like I absolutely, and that in turn sometimes can make me disconnect because I feel like, maybe I
See,
just kind of don't need to be there.
now these are your particular versions of belonging coming to the
Yes.
surface, right?
Yes.
But some
Yes.
of the
For
other,
sure.
so I'm hearing one there where you feel belonging when you have an opportunity to participate and be part of what's going on, as opposed to sitting on the outside of what's going on. There's other people for
Yeah.
whom it's the inverse. There's people for whom belonging happens when the folks I care about, which is
Hmm.
open to interpretation, recognize me at an event.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So let's say it's a corporate event and it's all employees. It's the sales team's annual retreat. You got 1,000 people on your sales team. They're all off at a thing. They want, for many of the people in the room, they're going to be interested in making sure that the CEO who's there says hi. That's
Hmm.
going to make them feel like they belong. So what do we do in those event situations? Usually the speaker or the C-suite folks, they're up at the front of the room, and you walk in and you sit down and you listen to them and then you leave. Easy fix. have those folks standing at the front like a wedding and going, "Hi, glad you're here. Welcome." So that you come in and you feel like you've been engaged and recognized by the folks who are later on going to be up at the front of the room.
Oh, this is an interesting comment. I feel that human touch can definitely bring in or drive people away.
Yeah,
For
sometimes
sure.
it's a little bit of a crapshoot, which is why you need the data to understand which one's going to work in your particular situation.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm speaking, I make a point of, so here's what normally happens. We've all seen a speaker, right? You go to the thing, there's all the tables all set up and there's a stage up there. And the speaker's usually sitting up at a table close to the stage so that you can just jump up on this, run up the stairs after you've been introduced. But there's always like 15 or 20 minutes after you've done your tech check as people start to file in where everyone's just kind of getting settled before they begin the program. I always go around the room and introduce myself to as many people as I can. I just walk up to tables and go, "Hi, I'm David. I'm going to be your speaker." And people are like, put their coffee down and go, "Oh, hi." And some people are like super engaged, and it helps me because now I feel like when I'm up on stage, I know people. And when I'm and other people are just like a little annoyed that I interrupted their conversation with their colleague, but oh well, welcome to Planet David. So yeah, I think there's all kinds of different ways that this shows up. I love this comment from Michael. People love when the barista recognizes them and knows their drink. Absolutely. And there's all the fun memes about how those baristas get it wrong and how annoyed some people are when they said my name is Sally and it comes out Stella or something. Yeah.
It's so true though. I mean, so what Michael said there about, people loving it when the barista recognizes them and knows her drink. I'll take my daughter once a week. I have a 15-year-old, Margot, and I'll take her once a week to Starbucks, and giving some love to Starbies over there. And we go through and we are impressed and definitely know the ones who know us and the ones who are new.
Yeah.
And it becomes this whole thing where it is a thing where we're worried about switching up what we do because we don't want to mess up the baristas knowing us so well.
Oh, for sure.
Isn't that weird?
It's not weird at all. There's a grocery store across the street from my condominium tower where I live, where I'm talking from right now. And there's a woman in there who's one of the cashiers. Her name's Irma. And when I go to the store, if Irma's not there, I buy less so that I can come back later. So I can get in Irma's line and have my little chat with Irma. I'll think, oh, Irma's not here. I'll just get what I need right now. I'll come back later and get groceries. So I can go into Irma's lineup, and we always talk about the weather. She wants to know where I've been. That store wouldn't be that store for me if it wasn't for Irma. If Irma ever retires, I'm in trouble. I don't know where I'm going to get my food.
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, Irma, you got to keep at it. If you're out there watching this, keep at it, because poor David, we don't want him to starve. So let's talk about what happens next. So I know that you have all kinds of things that are going on and on Planet David and with Valuegraphics. But as far as this work with belonging, what does the future hold with it? Where are things going? Because while it's focused on events, there are definitely applications in other places with this.
Yeah. I've been having some criticism from some folks about doing this whole thing about belonging and building the belonging index and not charging any money for it. I have friends and advisors who think it's silly, but what motivates us at Valuegraphics, and I know what motivates Naomi and what motivates Megan, is we just want to see this belongingness happen as many places as possible, as quickly as possible. So what happens next? I hope the belonging index, once it's fleshed out for events, which is what Naomi and Megan are working on now, taking the data points that the system already generates, talking to a whole bunch of people like you and saying, okay, so if those are the data points, what are some of the tactics and strategies we can use to execute on those things? Like my silly suggestion earlier of having, the CEO stand at the front door like he's at a wedding. But that tool, the intent is that it's just going to sit there for free as a website for the rest of time. And that I hope as many people as possible are able to go in there, access it, and start to build more inclusive events, more inclusive associations, the sense of belongingness that we all feel in our places and spaces around the world. If I can feel like I've helped to turn that dial just a little bit, if that's all my legacy ends up being, I'm perfectly happy with that. I'm
Aw.
perfectly happy with that.
Well,
Um,
I mean, yeah, I mean, it is, I think Megan referred to this work as a movement, really something that is just, they feel driven to work on, Naomi. And now I see, I mean, hearing it from you too, that it's, it's this work that's almost holy. It's like really, really important work that is good for the world.
yeah, like the clouds part, the Jesus rays, the boys choir, the whole thing, all
I
of
love
that and
it.
more, all of that Spielbergian in proportion. But here's a thing I learned from Naomi and Megan at IMEX in Frankfurt.
Mhm.
They had a setting there, a booth where they were doing this kind of qualitative work and talking about belongingness. And they shared a stat with me about inclusion that floored me. Uh, 25% of any group of people on average are neurodiverse.
Mhm. Mhm.
And the way Naomi phrased this just made me go, wow, I hadn't ever thought about this before. Whenever we put on an event or whenever we build an association and build a community of any kind, we do everything we can for the folks who have physical differences. There's a wheelchair ramp for the wheelchairs. There's always ways to deal with the ones we can see. But what about the folks who have a different way of being that we can't see? What about the folks who are ADD? What about the
Mhm.
folks who are OCD or who have a little bit of Asperger's or are struggling with some or living with some autism? And I'm probably using all the wrong politically incorrect ways of talking about this stuff, but those folks are equally challenged when they
Oh,
come to an event or be part of an association. And
yes.
belonging needs to be for them too. Uh,
Okay, David. Oh my gosh, I can't hold myself back.
yeah,
Yes, 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 yes. And this is such an issue right now for associations. Looking at there were a lot of explorations and experiments with being able to do virtual events, okay, because of COVID. And what we've seen is that over time, a lot of the organizations that had begun to create these virtual events or to have a hybrid version or some sort of online version that would allow people who could never attend in person for all kinds of reasons, because of, I mean, all kinds of reasons,
yeah.
they had been so thankful that that was available to them, and more those things are being taken away. This
Yeah.
is a huge discussion right now over in an association's discussion forum right now, that's happening. More and more of these virtual events are being taken away, and it's very upsetting for the people who had thought, okay, this is something new that now I can become more involved, now I can become more engaged.
It's
And
25% of us.
it's 25% of us. And what
Why
does
would
it
you wanna
say?
shut that down?
What is that saying when an organization just takes that off the table, like not offering it anymore? I mean, what can it say besides this is a money decision? It's based
Well,
on, you
but
know
it
what I
shouldn't
mean?
be a money decision. It's 25% more if
Yeah.
you don't take it off the table.
Yeah, find a
Uh,
new way to, I mean, I have friends, I see some names in here that have posted, and so I hope that I'm not, angering anyone, but it's just, I mean, I do feel really, it is one of those things where it's, I think it's short-term thinking to think, oh, we're not figuring out how to make our virtual event more, something that's more profitable. So we'll just, eliminate it. Okay.
yeah. Yeah, it's, I I know that it was not what a whole lot of us wanted. COVID forced us to find better ways to do this, but anybody thinking about this, the correct way, as far as I'm concerned, David's personal opinion to think about this is better because we can do both.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to just be live or just be virtual, and they can't just be a poor sister to each other. You can't just do a live event and have a camera in the corner and okay, now it's a digital event. They need to be thought about as different things. But there's all kinds of ways for this to be additive and augmentative to an association's programming. It doesn't have to be the same thing available in both modalities all the time. It can be that we have offline chats or digital chats about topics that were brought up at the conference, that anybody who didn't go to the conference can still participate in the offline chat or in the digital chat. I keep using the word offline in the wrong place. In the digital chat, and everybody gets to feel like they're still on top of that particular issue.
Yeah.
We should be embracing this and going, oh my God, there's twice as many ways for us to engage with people and make people feel like they belong now.
I know it. I know. I saw that somebody posted this earlier, and I know that it's not going to be easy for people. I'm going to put this in the show notes. It's a really long URL.
Oh, I heard about this.
But Dutch Market introduces a chat checkout lane for seniors to combat loneliness. Yes. Yeah, I heard about that too.
Fantastic. So in case anybody hasn't, let's tell them the story that there's a Dutch supermarket where every store, there's one lane where it's the slow lane, not the fast lane, 9 items or less, get in and out of here. It's the slow lane where you can go through and they have somebody manning that till who wants to chat and you can talk. And so for a senior who, it's unfortunate, but many seniors get to a point where their circle of friendship is just like shrunk. Going to the grocery store once a day, that's the only time they interact with humans. So they can get in that lane and they can have a little chat and talk about their grandkids and actually have some human interaction. And it's going over gangbusters. It's hugely successful.
I mean, I think with you're using technology and have been using technology in order to do really amazing research that allows us to understand people and their values, human values more effectively, and to do everything from sell, communicate, understand the people that are part of our organizations and companies and associations better and better. And yet, during this wonderful time of technology development and all of this kind of stuff, we have ChatGPT, we have generative AI that's able to do these amazing things that do look like magic. It's like, I think instead of looking at all of the magic that technology can do, there is this idea that that it's like evil. And I just really wish that we could, look at technology and how it can inform us with research, using it for research, and also how we can use it to better create the human elements of belonging for our events. We have the ability to figure out a way to provide more accessibility to people who need to be included in events. We have technology that allows us to do this cheaper and more effectively than ever before. So why is it that we're using some of our technology as an excuse to become less human, or to sort of allow ourselves to do this giant mail merge, and just sort of allow for our membership to sort of default into the mail merge and not into some sort of human to human relationship building. And I think that ultimately, that's why I think that the work that you're doing, the work that Naomi and that Megan are doing with this belonging conversation is really, really interesting, because for associations, for everyone, but for associations, because we need to be better at this. If we have an association for every industry. If we were better at this, we could change the world. We could change the world dramatically.
It's a massive voice, and we can be better at it. It's not that tough. So this is gonna sound like a plug for my book, But anybody who's ever written a book and put it on Amazon knows that you make about $1 a copy. So if everybody on listening to this right now buys, I might have enough for a really nice bottle of wine tonight. That's about as far as it's going to go. But the book's called The Death of Demographics. And in there, there's a quiz you can take. It's a 15-question quiz. You can send it out through your CRM system to all your association members. Get as many people as you can to respond. Give them a little incentive. Tell them that you're going to enter to win a $100 gift certificate for Amazon or something like that. And then it tells you how to analyze all the results, and it puts people into, it'll tell you for your audience who you sent that quiz out to, which of 15 archetypes, valuegraphic archetypes, they're most similar to. And once you have that in the book, there's 15 chapters, one for each of those valuegraphic archetypes, where we tell you what their values are, what turns them on, what gets them excited, what's going to make them say yes, all the different things we know about that particular archetype and how prevalent it is in your part of the world and all those other sorts of things. So it's a great start for associations to start using values to understand who people are, where belonging hits on that particular index for your particular audience. And all the other values that can help you create that, because in one way, belonging will happen when people feel like their values are reflected in your association. When they feel like you see them, you know who they are, you're talking to them on the inside like humans, not on the outside like demographic stereotypes, that can't help but increase an overarching sense of belongingness, let alone that particular value, which may or may not rank at the top of the list for your particular association. But when people are involved in a thing where they feel values alignment, they feel like they fit in. This is like being with my friends. We're all here because we're the same as each other. So if you can find it in your association budgets to spend, I think it's like $9 on the ebook version, or if you want to really blow the budget and go for the $15 hard copy version of the book, it's a really great way to get started using values to understand the people inside your organization.
Yeah. I mean, I can't say enough about it. I keep bringing it up here, and the people who are listening, they don't know that I'm doing that, but I have been just bringing the book up so that people can see. I have the hardbound version because yes, it's one of those that needs to be on the bookshelf at all times. Fancy,
The fancy version.
It's the fancy version. But I mark in my books. I take notes and notations because I look at these things as, especially those books I want to hold on to and I think have a lot of value. I use this as for all kinds of things so that I can go back and reference it when I'm trying to think about the types of values that, like, the listeners and viewers for association chat, or when I'm working with an association client and we're talking about their values. It's a really great way to frame how you're thinking about it, and also remind yourself that before you go and create one of those, we all have our persona development stuff. It's the fun thing to do, right? But before you go into that, please, just the next time you're about to do that again, or to revisit your personas again for a marketing effort, just take the time, take the time and read the book and let that inform what you're going to do, because it can make it so much richer.
Let me give you a couple of, I pulled up because I knew I was going to be talking to my association friends today. I pulled up a data that we did, a study we did for association members across the United States versus the US general population. So I'll just give you a couple of quick pointers. These are some things that you can keep in mind that you'll find if you go and use the quiz in the book and start to use values to flesh out those personas that Kiki was talking about. So one thing that association members over-index on that you may not have considered is personal responsibility. It's a super important value to them. They want to feel like they're the ones who are moving the needle and getting stuff done in the world. So how are you structuring your membership, your programs, your activities, so that they feel like they're doing it and it's not being done for them? The more control you can give them, the more they're going to feel like they fit in and they belong. So even things down to, like, how do you structure the homepage of your website? Let them make some decisions about what they want to see. Let them decide which version of a membership they'd like to have, because they want to feel like that was their call, not your call. So that's one big general one. I'll give you a couple quick others. Personal responsibilities over indexing. So is financial security. In fact, it's the number one most important value to association members across the United States. Financial security. Want to know that their decisions they're making are not going to damage their ability to feel secure about their finances. Now, multimillionaires can feel this as much as folks who are living hand to mouth. So it seems to me like a blatantly obvious thing that any association could do is have industry specific financial literacy as part of your programming. How can I be a better manufacturer of teacups, or whatever my association is? There are specific financial things that are applicable just to that kind of industry, that kind of sector. Every association in the country should have some sort of financial literacy training for people in that industry as part of their programming. I guarantee it'll be one of the most popular things you can offer. So there's two. We'll leave it at that. There's two things that hugely over-index for association members that you might not have considered.
Well, you've given us some helpful information to figure out what we can do next. What can people do next when they say, David, I just need more David in my life. I need some Planet David talking on my stage or coming to talk to me about doing research. What's the best way for people to reach you?
Well, there's LinkedIn's where I hang out. So if you just put my name or Valuegraphics in there, you'll find me there. A couple of websites. There's valuegraphics.com. That's our research company. Valuegraphics, all one word. Of course it would be. It's a URL, but many people want it to be two words: Value Graphics, which makes me sound like a company that does inexpensive signage or something. It's like demographics, value graphics, all one word. And then my speaking and writing and that stuff has its own website, and that's davidallisoninc.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk with us today, David. It's always a pleasure. I always learn more. I'm always better off having spoken with you. So thank you.
Well, and likewise, I always enjoy my time with you, and let's find more opportunities to be together in the real world.
Let's do that.
Okay.
Thank you. Wow, what an amazing time. I hope you all enjoyed it. And I really hope that you get a copy of this book. If you don't have The Death of Demographics, get this book, okay? Because it's really great information. It has a foreword by Don Peppers and Martha Rogers, which when I went through university, it's been a few years, but they are like geniuses and highly respected, knowledgeable academics and researchers. And so that's just high praise right there. But it will change what you do with your marketing. It will inform what you do with your strategic planning. I promise you. Go check it out. Okay. So my friends, I hope you take everything that you heard today and you think about it, you talk about it, you post about it, and you make change with it. I hope that not change like what we would give to Irma, by the way, but like make change happen. Go with me with it. I don't know. It's the afternoon and I need more coffee. But thanks for joining me today. I hope so much that you will continue asking questions to learn every day, because as Joseph Campbell once said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Have a great rest of the week, everyone.